rather than leaving here, we're going to ask the other speakers to come on up and join us on stage. And big round of applause for Colleen and Katie, Michelle, Kellem and Greg. So we have time for question and answer, but let's just, hit everyone with just one question each, and then we'll go open the floor to questions. For speakers, if you want to get ready with your headsets, if someone asks a question in Korean, so on the channel 2, we'll have the English feed. So the theme for this forum this year has been diversity and how that relates to balance. And so in each one of you, I think, spoke on a topic that very much relates back to this idea. And so I guess I'll just ask the question, not in terms of the past, but moving forward. What do you think the biggest challenges related to the topic that you spoke on, about diversity and balance? What are the challenges that you see that we as a community and as an industry need to figure out how to address? We can start with on the end.
Thank you for the 5 seconds to think about that very huge question. My initial reaction is we are at a point where we recognize the value and importance of diversity. And I hope that as we go forward, just as important is making sure to take a look and periodically check in by what we mean about diversity. Because as Michelle spoke to, it's not just about your gender identity or your race or your geography, that as we go forward and continue to ask why, let's not just assume that we've met a definition of diversity that's not evolving, that's not changing. Because if we've learned anything about now arriving at the point where we're finally saying, hey, diversity is important, we need to make sure that we have it, let's also take pause and ask the why. Not why is diversity important, we know that, but what do we mean by diversity? Are there layers that we haven't yet unpacked? So that would be my thought.
And in many ways, what's the diversity that's hard, not just the ones that are easy, right? Thank you. Michelle, what about you?
I think the biggest challenge will be people actually giving up power, the people who are in power, moving aside and letting others take the lead and take charge. Because really it's for people who have privilege, for instance, it's not, we tend to talk about in like these diversity conversations, like, we want to, add more seats to the table or bring more people to the table. But really, a lot of the people who have privilege and who are in power need to get up from the table and let someone else sit down, and take a hold of the conversation and start making decisions, because those without that privilege are going to be able to make decisions that'll better inform everyone and keep everyone in mind, while those who continue to have power are just going to want to uphold having power. There's
a word for that in Korean. It's 양보. 양보, it means to, we don't really have a word for that in English. The idea of stepping aside and letting somebody else do it. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Colleen?
Yeah, well, my topic was was a little bit different. And thinking about the issue of economic sustainability for coffee growers, it's right now the hardest challenge is working with very large retailers, grocery stores, food service businesses, and their roaster manufacturers to come up with a plan for committing to sort of minimum pricing or understanding that they are undercutting their producers in a way that their price deflation in the market is actively leading to these exacerbations of climate change and labor issues and economic refugee status for hundreds of thousands of people. And so, it's not, I mean, we can think about it in terms of sort of this colonial history and try and pick that apart and unpack that. But, when it comes down to talking with the sustainability folks at, I don't want to say any company name, but, they're so divorced from the larger scale decision-making and purchasing even, that it's really hard to get people to rally around a really fundamental economic proposition.
Right. Cindy, like again, diversity, balance, but as far as for the WCE organization, what do you see as the biggest challenges going forward?
Well, Michelle's point actually reminded me of a situation that I think we encounter a lot, which is that there's never a shortage of people who all say, I want a seat at that table. And it's important for us to think we want to make that table as big as possible. But the reality is that's not how most strategic planning works. You have a small group of people who are aligned on a process or a way to think in order to really impart change. But with the creation of the competitions or in any activity, I would find a lot of people. I remember some story of a particular person getting really upset with me, saying, "I've got a lot of things to say, and you just won't let me be there." And because I have so many complaints, I have so much I can critique. And my answer was, everybody out in the world can complain and can critique. That's not what we need. We need the people who want to solve these problems that will take those complaints and recognize them and actually come up with ideas and solutions. That's the kind of group we need when we come to the table to think about the next step of what we want to do with these competitions. But I think that's true in any case, in anything you want to do. If you want to, push evolution, you want to push innovation, you want to design something that's meaningful, you have to be willing to say your approach isn't to talk and complain about everything that's wrong, but is to actually come to the table with those crazy ideas that could eventually be something that's right for now until the next evolution.
Greg, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge to coffee sustainability that I'm seeing in many ways is that fundamentally coffee is about agriculture, and the coffee industry, and especially where the money is in the coffee industry, it's about roasting, extraction, marketing, and even sourcing, logistics. There's tremendous skills that are necessary to make a successful coffee operation happen. But none of those skills are actually growing the coffee, are actually agriculturally based. And so there's a disconnect between the industry that is reliant upon this fruit that is grown on the trees and the producers that are making it. And so I think one of the things that has happened, the whole going to origin thing and buying direct, that has really forced a lot of roasters to understand farming in ways that were inconceivable in the 90s. But that's the fundamental issue, is that the people who need to take action in order to forestall something pretty dramatic happening in the coffee lands don't have the agricultural background to really understand the risks that are happening, or to understand what is the most appropriate way to respond to the situation that's currently happening. So I think that's key. Is I think our roasters in the coffee industry are really needing to become more agriculturally conscious and understand the issues that farmers, not just coffee farmers, but that all farmers experience, and they'll be able to respond, I think, in a way, in more partnership with their producers.
Right, very good. Finally, Katie, what do you think? I mean, you talked a lot about kind of your predecessors who were in your job, and looking ahead, you know, for yourself and for others in a similar situation. What do you think the biggest challenges are regarding kind of finding balance and supporting diversity in your work?
Yeah, I think we need new systems and we need new models. I think that having different people that have a platform and a voice to speak about some of the challenges that the industry is facing and bringing their personal perspective to it is great, but you know, nothing is going to change about the economics of coffee farming not being profitable until we have a new price discovery system outside of the C market. You know, if we can't actually change those fundamentals, we are in trouble. So yeah.
Great. So at this time, I'm going to open the floor to questions. Does anyone have any questions? Could you raise your hand? And maybe I see a hand over here. There's a microphone. And for the people on stage, are you going to say it in English or 한국말로 하실 거예요?
예, 한국말로.
Okay, he's going to say it in Korean, so get your headsets up on channel 2.
KT 분께 질문 드리고 싶은데요. 저는 이제 작은 카페를 운영하고 있어요. 이제 원래는 빵이랑 커피만 팔다가 이제 최근 들어가고 이제 로스팅을 하면서 이제 운영을 하고 있는데요. 그러니까 제가 이제 그러니까 지속 가능한 커피 관련돼서 이제 얘기를 많이 듣다 보니까 예전에는 그러니까 로스팅을 하면서 이제 한 번을 통해서 WCR도 알게 되고 이제 그 카운터 컬처에서 나온 그 에티오피아 그 품종 그 커피 그 책을 보면서 최근 들어갖고 이제 한 번 통해서 이제 그 커피를 이제 손님들하고 나눠 먹으면서 이제 그 단일 품종 하나를 뭐 그런 식으로 했고 이제 커피에 더 재미를 느끼고 있는데요. 네, 로스팅을 하면서 이제 지속 가능한 커피를 하려면 어쨌든 손님들께 이제 최종 소비자한테 정보를 제공하는 게 좀 지속 가능한 커피를 위해서도 손님들의 인식을 바꾸는 게 중요하다라고 생각을 해서 좀 개인적으로 좀 노력을 하고는 있는데 이게 좀 그러니까 그 커피를 뽑는 그 단순한 그 시간 짧은 시간 속에서 이제 손님들한테 얘기를 하다 보면은 이제 좀 막히는 경우도 많이 있고 또 그런데 이런 거 그러니까 어쨌든 간에 그런 이제 이런 뭐 농장이나 이런 좀 안 좋은 이런 여건들을 이제 좀 이렇게 소비자들한테 이제 좀 바리스타로서 소개를 이렇게 하고 이제 좀 이런 정보를 소통을 하고 싶은데 좀 효과적으로 할 수 있는 방법이라던가 뭐 이렇게 예전에 바리스타 하시면서 이렇게 뭐 이렇게 이런 방법 시도해 보신 적이 있는지 예, 좀 이렇게 여쭤보고 싶습니다.
This is a great question. Thank you for asking. I think that there's a few issues on the cafe level. I think that the time of the interaction that you have makes it difficult to get very deep about some of the issues. And I think that all of the different aspects of what makes something sustainable, trying to touch on all of that or be very inclusive about what matters in coffee makes it difficult for customers to understand that. We talked about this a little bit earlier today, and I think that Greg brought it up, is I think that you can maybe not educate customers when they are purchasing coffee from you, but in the way that you market your coffee, you could have meetings and events where you talk about the coffees that you're serving or an aspect of sustainability at coffee farms, or a competition where you're doing something fun, but you're also talking about the supply chain behind the product. I think that customers want to be able to trust that the companies that they're buying from are doing good work. And so using other ways that aren't just selling coffee by making products like you referenced the Ethiopia Varieties book at Counterculture, that doesn't display sustainability, but it shows to customers that we are a company that is thinking about the entire supply chain of coffee. And so it gives our brand a certain amount of moral weight. So engaging in those conversations in the industry and then also with your customers, they don't need to understand everything that you understand. They just want to see that you are challenging yourself and you are learning and you are engaged with the coffee community.
Okay, thank you for a good question. Any other questions? Can you, 손 들어주세요. 네.
한국어로 하겠습니다.
He's asking in Korean, so.
네, 저는 경북대학교 식품외식 산업학과에 재학 중인 하경모라고 하고요. 먼저 제 얘기를 드리자면 저는 손이 조금 불편한 장애인입니다. 약 한 중학교 때부터 커피 업계에서 일을 해왔고 대학을 위해서 그만둔 뒤에 얼마 전부터 다시 직장을 구하기 위해서 여러 곳에 면접을 봤습니다. 그런데 대부분은 말씀을 얘기 주시진 않지만 몇 군데에서는 네가 장애인이기 때문에 우리는 뽑아줄 수 없다라고 하시는 분들이 있었습니다. 오늘 프레젠테이션에서 말하는 거는 젠더와 인종에 대해서 얘기를 주셨는데요. 이건 조금 다른 얘기지만 장애인들을 고용에 대한 문제에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시는지 여쭤보고 싶습니다. 모든 분들에게요.
Who
앞으로
wants
안
to take?
계실까요?
Who wants to take that one? It's a great question. Sure.
I feel like it's a shame that this wasn't, the spirit of your question was not addressed up here on stage today, because I think that most of us up here think about this and what we would call in English ableism on generally a day-to-day basis. And actually in the past 3 days that some of us have been together, the topic of ableism, which I don't know if you want to try and define that, Nick. You're really good at definitions, but we've discussed it a few times, and I think that that in the United States, at least this is the only context that I can speak to, but there are a number of people that are speaking out against how challenging coffee preparation and roasting and all of the physical labor in the coffee production environment in cafes or in roasteries. They lend towards efficiency, and it's very, very challenging to try and disrupt the flow of a workspace in order to accommodate people that are challenged with height, or that aren't able to, as you had said, use your hands in a way that probably other people are able to do. And I think that business owners are starting to think more about how do we accommodate and how do we create different systems of flow in order to allow for more people to participate and to give them the opportunity to participate in specialty coffee and have them be able to define what it means to work in a specialty coffee cafe or to work in a specialty coffee roastery or anything like that. So I feel like your question was what do we think about hiring people that are differently abled, and I think that that's happening more and more in the United States, and we're bringing up these conversations in a lot of the events that we have in the United States, and I think that's all I can say about that, because I'm not a business owner, and I don't have the opportunity to hire people, so I can't speak towards being a business owner in that context.
I'm a business owner. Yeah, I'm a business owner, and the question for you is, do you think you could do the job of a barista?
한 2, 3년 정도를 일을 했을 때 잦은 실수라든지 그런 것은 없었습니다. 오히려 사장님께서 너가 더 일반인보다 더 잘하는 것 같다라는 말씀까지 해주셨고요.
Right. I want to say first, I think I'm not the only person who feels this way. That my heart hurts from your story. You know, I kind of want to cry. It's not okay. It's not okay for you to experience that, and I want to say that. I think the other would agree. Colleen talked about ableism, you know, and that's not really a word in Korean, I think, but people understand racism and sexism, and ableism is just like that. It's one of the same things. It's a special one because it's the only kind of oppression that anybody can be in your situation at any time. That's the only one that's like that, and in that way, it actually affects everybody in that potential way. But I do think that when we think about ableism, sexism, racism, sometimes we're faced with questions where we don't always have the answer. But when we think about the other ones, be it sexism, racism in this situation, it helps to provide the idea for like how we can think about it. And so in many ways, the question is very much like if we have, in Korea, if we had a black person who wanted a job, or, you know, there was a woman or, you know, LGBT person who wanted a job, who maybe some people, or the majority of people think that have a reason they can't do it as successfully. How would you deal with that situation? And of course, you know, that's where we would all have a lot of different thoughts. Ultimately, as a business owner, I hope you can don't give up, and I hope you can find a place and a boss and a business owner who can see how wonderful of a barista you would be, and be able, and that's my hope for you, and I hope that you keep trying.
Nick, I got a little thing I'd like to say here too, and I think one of the things that you can do is, you know, partially what you're talking about is a bias that isn't spoken of, you know, that you come in, and so, and this is, I think, the part of that is very similar to bias with race or bias with gender, or that's the part of it that's connected in that there's a preset bias that puts you one down than somebody else, but there's also something a little bit different about a physical issue, and one of the things that you can do about that is to directly speak to it by saying, this is the issue that I have with my hands. This is what it prevents me from doing. This is what it allows me from doing. This is how this is my experience of my disability. And and then to be able to then talk about how you have overcome some of those issues, and to be able to talk about your past experience and the passion that you have for whatever position is that you're working for. I think what it does is it takes something that's kind of maybe in the background and is kind of functioning like a gender bias, and it brings it out into the open and into the light of the day where you can talk about it. And a lot of times with people with that are dealing with a bias regarding a physical disability, they just don't know how to talk to you about it. You know, that they don't want to point it out. They just don't know how to do it. And if you can come in and be that advocate for yourself and to be able to say, this is my condition, this is how it has affected me, this is how I've overcome it, this is how I know I can do the job, I have this experience over here and over here and over here. And not only that, but I'm also bringing this to the table that I think is extremely valuable to what you're trying to do. So I think that's part of it, instead of trying to just come into the interview and hope that somebody isn't going to hold that against you, but you put it right out on the table. And I think this is something that women had to do initially when they were moving into the workforce, that especially in positions that were traditionally men, that they had to come in and they had to very much put it out on the table and to say, now I know that you don't think that women can drive trucks because of A, B, and C, but this is my experience, and this is, you know, where you take it out of the unconscious bias and you put it right on the table and then allow people to make a decision based on something that's in the light as opposed to kind of in the background.
Cindy?
I think I'd like to add something to that as well, because it reminds me of a story. When I was working at Counterculture Coffee, I was a director there for many years, and Katie put up a picture in her presentation earlier that reminds me of this. There was a design for a bag label that was very tricky, very challenging to apply. And at the time, the company just said, this is so hard for us to do it. We don't have the labor inside the company. And so we found a company that would just label these bags for us. And I remember when I found this company, they were just labeling the bags for us. But later, the man who coordinated this with me told me the story that actually all the people that they hired for labeling the bags were legally blind. Now, it sounds crazy, the idea that blind people were applying the stickers on this bag that was so difficult to apply a sticker to. But we had created a mold to try to form the bag and a positioning to guide where you put it. And as it turns out, when we did it, we just did it because it was the thing to do to make it work. That by doing that, it made it possible for anybody to do it. And they could just feel where it goes and they could apply it. And we saw no difference. When we were told this story, of course, it was by accident. There's no way that Counterculture could claim at that point that they made a conscious decision. But what it did to us, the employees that worked at Counterculture, was it taught us we can make a conscious decision. If that same question had come to us, would you hire a team of people who are blind to label your bags? I can tell you, our initial instincts probably would have been hesitation. But the fact that after the fact, the man told me that the people who were labeling our bags and were doing a good job at it were all blind, taught me that it is possible to consider things that you think aren't possible. And after that, I believe there were so many moments like that happened in along my time with that company, you know, that, and I think it's a great company, but those were the learnings that made us recognize we can make decisions that stand for what we would like to support, that push us to identify these things. So I would say, to any business owner or anybody with any job, you actually always have the power and the influence to help make choices that might be choices that create more inclusivity, create the diversity that's needed, allow others to have a chance to gain experience. And so, that was, I believe, a small example of one of the many, many moments in the history of my time in that company that made us decide to choose to be a better company in many different ways. It was completely accidental, but it was one story that I remember very distinctly. And so I just think that's something to keep in mind, is every single company that you approach, they can do better. Anybody who's in a company, anybody here at all, everybody has the potential to help push that idea forward so that the whole world could be better.
Yeah, thanks. Good luck, keep trying, and if you can't find a job, come to San Francisco, I'll give you a job. Yeah. Maybe time for one more question. Anybody? Oh, yeah, please. You can do it English or Korean?
I'm gonna try English.
Okay.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here and to address all of you. I'm from Guatemala originally, but I've been living in Japan for over 20 years. And I have a kind of interesting story about myself, because I know what it is to be on that side of the story when you're talking about the people that grew up in really bad conditions. I didn't have shoes, or I know what it is to share one boiled egg cut in 4 pieces and eat with my brothers. But somehow in my life I got a chance to come to this area in Japan, and I learned a lot of things. And I learned something very interesting, that we have good coffee in Guatemala. I had to come all the way here to learn that in a much bigger way. And I started a business about coffee. I started buying coffee in Japan, specialty coffee, and I created a brand that is called Dark's Coffee. Later on, when people ask me, hey, is your brand fair trade coffee? And being from Guatemala and knowing exactly what happens there, I hesitated a lot to answer to that question, because I don't want to tell people, no, don't buy fair trade coffee, because I believe that is a really good concept, and it must be reaching to some people. But on the other hand, I also know that it doesn't reach to all of them. So I try to explain in the best way possible about the problem that is happening with coffee. But then later, I decided to do something in my own hands. So I sold everything I had, and I went to Guatemala and started a small micro wet mill. Later, I knew that I was creating something interesting for the Guatemalan Coffee Association, that they later called me and asked me to share that with many other people. I started that in January 2017, and immediately in the same year, we ended having more than 200 farmers joining us, because they found somehow in what I'm doing a solution. I didn't know what exactly was going on, but with all the graphs that you show here and all your stories, that you explain a lot of what's going on with coffee business in the world. People are not making the money that they invest in their coffee farms. This year, many of the farmers that have joined my group, they decided not to go and get the coffee from their farms, just leave it there, because it takes a lot of money just to pay to somebody to go and cut the coffee from the trees. That's very sad. Many people I met there that now, if they were lucky, they made it to the United States because they moved there, they went there illegally, searching for a way to survive, because that's what people are struggling. People didn't really care when I told them about all the luxuries about the coffee industry in Japan or the other countries like here in Korea that I've seen. When I talk about these events, they don't really care that much, because what they care the most is what are they going to eat the next day? How can they buy medicine for their kids and education? Now, when I was there, the thing that got the most of my attention was that how is it possible that somebody like me with little know-how in the coffee industry that went there with just one idea got that much attention from these people, and there are so many big companies in the world and many associations, And people were finding in me, they see a little light for a solution. Because this is what I did. I focused in the very small coffee farmers, the ones that sell their coffee cherries, to the coyotes. You know what that means, right? That they sell to the bigger buyers, and then it ends at the big wet mills. So they don't get any money. It's really little. But when I created this system that they can work their coffee by themselves and then add value to it. Now we're struggling with another thing. We don't have a name. So because we are so small, and we are still a big group, we are still a group, but we are very small people there. We are ants. What exactly is that the people want in the market right now? That's the question for most of the people that have joined what I'm doing. Do they want the quality? Do they want the name? Or what are they looking for in the market right now? Because we are trying to work without water, electricity, and any other power source. But it still seems to be that people are always asking us for all the certifications. What can I tell these people when I go back there and tell them, hey, I had a chance to be in front of the World Coffee leaders? Please help me a little bit with this. Thank you.
Colleen, Katie, that seems like a question for the two of you.
I mean, I think in part you answered your own question, because I think one of the reasons that you're in this position is because you represent a bridge, right? You understand the coffee growing world, and you also had the opportunity to live in Japan, and so you understand the coffee consuming world. So that's one of the reasons that you were able to be so successful, is that people saw an opportunity for you to be that bridge between the market for what it will pay for and for farmers to be able to sell. So I think every coffee buyer and every market is different in exactly what they're looking for. I mean, for counterculture, part of what I talked about is that quality has always been a really good differentiator for us, and I think it's been what the specialty coffee industry has really flourished on, is this idea that consumers want quality. So that's maybe how I would answer the question, but I think that in Seoul it could be different, and in Japan it also could be different. But one thing that everybody needs is market access. We need the markets to exist. We need people to be communicating with each other and understanding how to produce the product that the market wants, and bringing that product to be able to be purchased by the market. We need the market channels.
Colleen, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to Katie's point that there are so many different wants based on the type of roaster or brand that is purchasing the coffee. And for specialty coffee, obviously, it's very much about quality. It's about storytelling. It's about marketing assets. It's about relationships. They want direct relationships with coffee producers in their supply chain. They want to be innovative. They want to really highlight the uniqueness about their producer partners. They want to call them producer partners. They might not know what that means, but that's what they want. Then there are others that just want risk mitigation strategies, and they don't want to pay for it. And that is the reality. They want to buy coffee as cheaply as possible. I'm talking about two ends of the spectrum, by the way. Then there's many people in between. They want to buy cheap coffee, and they want to transfer some of those earnings to sustainability programs and give back to communities with direct payments or investments in productivity programs or good agricultural practices programs. They want to, it's just a different business model. But there's no way that they are actually going to try and understand, to Greg's presentation earlier, to create these self-sustaining mechanisms. So they're looking for proof of impact. They're looking for that risk mitigation. They want assurance that there is no child labor or slave labor or analogous to slave labor in their supply chains. And they don't want to pay for it, right? So if you're looking at a certification as that strategy, there's only one certification that has a minimum price, right? There's only one certification that, you know, has a static premium associated with it. But that doesn't mean that a company, you know, that it's sort of better than any other certification, but you know, which is why there's only a certain percentage of fair trade coffee in the world that's sold as fair trade coffee. That companies don't want to purchase at that price level. And to my point, when we opened up this panel, what is the biggest challenge? I mean, I really do believe it's getting these large-scale companies that have the purchasing power, that have the ability to make a commitment, public commitments. It would take one or two companies to say, you know what, baseline price for my company is this. It doesn't have to be $1.40, but it could be something that through their own research they've recognized production costs in their supply chains are XYZ, cost of compliance adds these additional costs, cost of implementation of programs adds these, and they just have to be able to do that. But they're probably not going to do that unless there's a lot of public pressure put on them and people exposing child labor analogous to slave labor in their supply chains to the public market. And you know, we'll see if that happens. The way that things are going, there's only going to be more cheap and informal labor happening. And yeah, I mean, that's what they want. They know that it's happening. They want assurance that it's not happening. And they're not willing to pay either way.
Okay, that's going to be it for us. Thank you so much, all of the panelists, all of our speakers. Big round of applause one more time for everyone. And we're going to move directly into our closing ceremony. And at this time, I'd like to invite Danny Shin to the stage to give the final remarks. We're going to ask each speaker to, I guess, come up and receive a little appreciation gift. Maybe get a picture. Okay. From the end, we want to start. Kellem, Emanuele, you come on up. Yep. Hey, just come up.